Do you think your success is all because of hard work? Or are there any advantages that our current system gives people like you after achieving a certain level of wealth?
Well, thank you for the question. I mean, if anyone would have told me when I was 10 years old or 15 years old, living in public housing, that I would reach this level of success, I honestly would never have believed it. Not possible. But why was it possible? It's possible because it could only happen in America. I grew up in public housing in Brooklyn, New York. In the projects. When I was 7 years old, my father came home from work, injured on the job, lost his health insurance, lost workman's compensation, and we were destitute as a family. I lived through the shame and understanding of what it means to be in fear of no health insurance and no money. I took that experience and it provided me a lens of how I would see the world and how I would try and build my company. My business experience is not qualifications to run for president, but it is what I've learned along the way. And if you look at Starbucks, what I've done in the last 36 years, unlike almost any other company in America, is we've provided comprehensive health insurance for every employee, ownership for every employee, free college tuition for every employee. And we did that because of trying to build a different kind of company of balancing profit with responsibility. And I think that is a model for trying to do things in America that has not been done before. And that is to create the kind of spirit and the kind of confidence that the American people are looking for in leaders that they do not have today.
So let's talk, it's a good question. Let's talk a little bit more about that, about if your experience to potentially be the next president of the United States is not your experience running Starbucks and building it, what is your qualification to be president?
Well, I think my qualifications is my life experience. What we're really talking about today is the fact that the country has lost a sense of leadership in both parties, lost a sense of understanding about the values and the conscience of the country, and someone has to stand up and say, I'm going to be accountable, I'm going to look at the results of what we need to do, and we're going to accomplish things on the basis of what the American people need. Both parties today, on the far left and the far right, are more interested in partisan politics, revenge politics, and not doing the people's business. The reason I'm here tonight and the reason I've stepped up is because I'm concerned about your children, my grandchildren, and the future of the country. I know we can do better than this. Now, when I look at the country today, and I look at a statistic that says 40% of the American families don't have $400 in case of a crisis, what it says to me is that the prospects of that level of success that I enjoyed is not as accessible to them as it was to me. I find that completely unacceptable. And it's unacceptable because the government and Washington is not providing a level of humanity, responsibility, and understanding about the compassion and the empathy necessary to make sure that everyone in America has a chance at that dream. I mean, I'll just ask you a question of all of you. Does anyone in this audience think that the United States government is doing well for you and your family or for the country and the American people? Raise your hand if you think the government is doing well for you.
Not a single hand.
So no one in this audience, just think about this, no one in the entire audience thinks the government is doing well. That is why I'm here. And I got good news for you. We can fix it. We can fix it. But we can't fix it under a broken system where the far left and the far right are more engaged every single day and more interested in self-preservation, self-interest, and not representing you.
So on that point, Mr. Schultz, you say it's not your business experience at Starbucks that has qualified you for this fully. A lot of it is your personal experience, your childhood.
Yeah.
For everyone who doesn't know, not only did you grow up in poverty and in public housing, you were abused. You were assaulted by your father. And there is a moment that you write about that was formative at 15 years old. What happened and how did it change the trajectory of your life?
In the book that I've just released, for the first time in my life, I have revealed very personal stories that I thought were important for people to know about me and also potentially give other people perhaps the courage or the conviction to tell their story. I grew up with a father that was in a very tough situation. He had no purpose in life. He didn't make any money. He was a World War II veteran and unfortunately never found his way. And he was a bitter man. And as a result of that, there were moments of rage and abuse. It didn't define me. I didn't hate my father, but it did provide me with a level of vulnerability, insecurity, and scars that I still have today. And that's perhaps why I have such a high degree of sensitivity about so many people in America who are being left behind. I just think it's unconscionable to live in a country where so many Americans believe that the promise of the country is no longer available to them. And so everything I've done in the last number of years is literally trying to make my parents proud. Unfortunately, they did not get a chance to see my success. But what I want to do is restore the faith in the country and restore our values and our sense of humanity with one another. That's what I want to do. The Republicans on the far right want to do everything they can, which I agree with, in terms of securing the borders. That's the right thing to do. The Democrats want to abolish ICE, more or less. The Republicans have put people, children, in cages and stripped mothers from babies. That is not humane. The dreamers, in my view, in terms of the humanity of the country, should be allowed a pathway to citizenship. And 11 million to 12 million unauthorized people who are here should get in line in a fair way, pay their back taxes, pay a fee, and bring them in. But the question of humanity is this. Everyone in this room, 95% of all of us here, are here because of our ancestors have come here as immigrants. We are a country of immigrants.
Let's get to our next question on another key issue that can be very divisive.
So if you're elected president and being a member of the group of people who earn over $10 million, what would your proposed tax plan be?
Thank you for the question. I'm going to try and explain this to you in a very personal way. First off, I should be paying more taxes. And people who are in the bracket of making millions of dollars, or whatever the number might be, should be paying more taxes. But we have to go back a year or so. I was very vocally against President Trump's corporate tax break of lowering the corporate tax rate from 35% to 21%. I was against it because corporations should not have been given that sweet deal without any incentive to do anything for their employees or the communities they serve. Education, training, whatever. There was a tremendous opportunity for the United States to have comprehensive tax reform. And that would have meant higher rates on individuals like myself. Corporate tax rate of 21% should have never happened. And we should have examined how can we create comprehensive tax reform so that we could lower the taxes for the middle class. But the headline is here, I should be paying more taxes, and people who make this kind of revenue and of means should pay more taxes. If you look at the American people and you ask them this following question, do you trust the government? Do you trust Congress? Most people in America say, I've lost trust and confidence in Congress and certainly in the president. And so when you ask people to pay more taxes, we have to make sure that there is an agreement that your additional tax dollars are going to be spent wisely by the government. We need comprehensive tax reform in the United States, where the people who are making more are paying more taxes. We're lowering the tax for middle-class Americans, and we're doing it in a comprehensive way. In addition to that, there should be infrastructure development. And one of the things I've learned this year, which really surprises me, is that about 20-30% of people who live in rural America do not have broadband access. FDR, more than 60 years ago, made it a right for every American to have electricity. It should be a right for every American family to have broadband access. So we're living in a digital age. We can't leave the American people behind.
That we are. Although I could get off Twitter from now and then.
Okay. I asked the audience, does anyone in the entire audience think that things are going well and the U.S. government is representing this audience and the American people well? And there wasn't one hand that goes up. I think that is primary evidence that the majority of Americans who are not on the extreme left and the extreme right feel as if they are not being represented and that we are losing something. We all know something's not quite right. And so when I look at the situation, I have a strong belief that it's time to disrupt the two-party system that is broken, that is based on revenge politics. And now people have asked me, how could you win? And I think this is a very important point. I know probably want to get to the next question, is that in the last almost 30 years, every presidential election basically came down to 8 to 10 battleground states. But can you imagine a situation, if I run for president, we will be on the ballot of every state, and then the majority of every state, almost 50 states, a couple of them will not be in play, but let's say 45. For the first time in over 30 years, everyone's vote will matter. So if you're a Democrat in a red state, your vote doesn't matter because it's predetermined, and vice versa. But in a three-person race in almost 50 states, for the first time in over 30 years, American people have a voice and their vote really counts. And I'm here not saying I'm against the Democratic Party. I'm here saying I no longer recognize how far left they've gone. I just don't see myself in the party. And I believe that the majority of Americans feel like I do. The far right and the far left does not represent them, and they're looking for a home. I also think millions of Republicans who do not want to pull the lever for Donald Trump, if they have a better choice versus a far left Democrat, will come my way.
So let's dig into this a little bit.
Sure.
Yes or no? Is there any world in which you run as a Democrat?
No.
Okay. There you go.
No, I didn't even have to think about that.
Okay.
No, and I have nothing against the Democratic Party. It just I don't feel represented. First off, the issue of being a spoiler. How can you spoil a system that is already broken? It's just not working. So it's not the right word. Now, what I've said publicly, and I want to repeat, if the math doesn't tally up when I get to the next 3 or 4 months and I take my message out to the American people and I continue to talk this way about how concerned I am about the country and how much I think we can do so much better under a different process, if the numbers don't add up, I will not run for president. It's a lot less about me than giving the American people a voice that they don't have. And what better expression of our democracy than giving the American people a better choice, a new choice? There's nothing in the Constitution, not one word, that says anything about parties. So why can't I raise my voice and say I'm deeply concerned about where we are as a country, I'm deeply concerned about our standing in the world, which we have not gotten into, and I want to restore a set of values and dignity back into the Oval Office, and I want to see the American people once again feel as if America is a place for everyone, regardless of your station in life, the color of your skin, your sexual orientation, your gender, that everyone has an opportunity in America, and give the power of our government back to the American people. So that is why I'm here. I don't believe China is our ally, but I also do not believe China is our enemy. What I do believe is that China is a fierce competitor of the United States. I also think there are areas that are in our national interest to cooperate with China. We need China's cooperation to help solve the problem of North Korea. We also need China's cooperation specifically with lots of other nations with regard to doing everything we can to solve the climate change issue.
Let's talk about China a little bit more, if we could here, because you've been many, many times.
Yes.
And I believe Starbucks is opening a new store in China every 15 hours. You own personally more than 33 million shares in Starbucks stock, which closed at a record high yesterday. That's over $2 billion worth. And you've said that the exposure of Starbucks in China will be greater than in the United States pretty soon. If you become president, how is Starbucks' considerable reliance on China not a conflict of interest for you?
A very important question. First off, in the last 20 years, Starbucks has built almost 4,000 stores in China and done it in a very successful way by partnering with the Chinese government, by demonstrating to them American values. As an example, not only have we given health care to our employees in the US, we actually gave critical health care to the parents of our employees in China. the first company, not only Chinese company, first company ever to do anything like that, demonstrating America's values and the humanity of our company. What I've said publicly is that if I run for president, there will be no conflict of interest of anything that has to do with Starbucks, and certainly with regard to China.
So
I'm running, if I run for president, I'm running not as an independent, I'm running as an American, wrapping myself in the American flag. My first order of business is to put the American people first in everything I do, and there will be no conflict of interest in anything I have to do legally to separate myself from my financial interest with regard to China will be completely done. I am not Donald Trump. I will do nothing whatsoever to have any conflict of interest between my investments overall or my interest in the company that I love, because I will put the role and responsibility and the accountability for results first if I run for president and I'm fortunate enough to win. And that is a promise I make to the American people.
let's get to our next question.
Hi. As a veteran, I have been very disappointed and displeased by both the professionalism and services of the VA healthcare system. We have many outdated hospitals run by non-veteran medical and mental health providers. What are your solutions for modernizing the VA healthcare system and giving veterans the opportunity to receive advanced medical and mental health care and state-of-the-art facilities that our veterans most desperately need and deserve?
Thank you. With great humility, thank you for all you've done for the country, for you and your family's sacrifice and commitment to the United States of America. Thank you. I have spent a great deal of time over the last few years engaged in learning as much as possible about the military, their role in the world, and the responsibility that the VA has. Just as a side note, Starbucks Coffee Company has hired almost 20,000 veterans and or spouses. We have built 50 Starbucks stores adjacent to military bases. And my wife and I have created an opportunity for 18 transitional training services on military bases. Just quick story, we were in a meeting and someone who was transitioning out said something I will never forget. And he said, I have more anxiety about going on a job interview than I do going back to Afghanistan. And when I heard that, I knew that we had to do something to solve this problem. So over 1 million extraordinary young men and women like yourself who have worn the cloth of the nation have come home and have had a tough time with transition. Specifically the VA. When I'm going to give you a number you're not going to believe. Does anyone in the audience know what the annual budget is for the VA? You will be shocked. The annual budget for the VA is $200 billion. $200 billion. And I asked you a question earlier about the United States government and the left and the right. Is there any more evidence that we need as a country that we are not the solemn promise to take care of our veterans when they take off the cloth of the nation? And we have a $200 billion agency that is not serving the men and women properly. Now, there are good people in the VA, but there is a level of bureaucracy that is just unbelievable. And now we want to turn over the entire healthcare industry to the US government. I mean, let's be real about certain things. The US government does some great things, but the VA isn't one of them. And let me just say, if I run for president and I'm fortunate enough to be elected president, I raise my hand right now and I tell you all, I am a business person that is results oriented. I've run a public company for 26 years. I raise my hand and I say, I will fix the VA and I will be personally accountable if I run for president and I'm fortunate enough to win. No one in decades has fixed the VA with an annual budget of $200 billion. It is criminal.
Mr. Schultz, you have diagnosed a problem. It's a problem we all know exists, and it's a tragedy and a travesty. What would you do to fix it?
Okay, what I would do to fix it, first off, is diagnose the problem. And diagnosing the problem is that we have layers and layers and layers of government bureaucracy. No one knows who's in charge. There's no transparency of records. Veterans are waiting weeks and months for prescription drugs. There's all kinds of problems. You have to put the quality people in charge with accountability to the president. The President of the United States is not concerned about the VA. That is not what he's worried about. He talks a great deal about his support of veterans, but doesn't do much other than when the cameras are on. I will fix the VA because it's about leadership, it's about character, and it's also about the temperament of humility to listen to people who are smarter than you, who have more experience than you, to help solve this problem. So it's really about leadership, it's about character, and it's about results and accountability. I will be accountable, and if I run for president, I promise you, I will fix the VA. I think everyone in America, every person deserves to have the right for affordable care. Every person. Second, there needs to be competition in the system. And what I mean by that is competition so that the American people can get access to prescription drugs at lower prices, because right now the government is not allowed under a federal law to negotiate with pharma. The third thing is that it has been tested but not proven yet about interstate commerce among insurance companies. But there's no doubt that once again, the healthcare crisis has been with us for a long time. The other issue is I stand by the fact that I supported the Affordable Care Act. It covered 20 million people who did not have good insurance, but premiums have gone up double since the Affordable Care Act. So now we got to go back in and fix the Affordable Care Act and bring premiums down. Competition will do that. But the far right, remove the...
How? The question is how.
Yeah.
I don't mean to startle you from the back.
No.
The voice over your shoulder over here. But how specifically? Because I think so many people here hear that, but they say that is what Congress has been trying to do or talking about doing
You're wrong.
for so long.
Respectfully, it's not what Congress has been trying to do. What Congress has tried to do is on the far right, eradicate the Affordable Care Act, and now on the far left, bring up Medicare for all, while prices have gone up. I mean, people are paying $300 for a vial for insulin that 10 years ago cost like less than $100, and the cost of it hasn't gone up. So this, you're gonna
But lowering the price of prescription drugs doesn't solve the whole problem.
It doesn't solve the whole problem, but do we understand the fact that the prescription drugs, again, I don't know how many people understand this. Prescription drugs in America are priced at price X, because we cannot negotiate with the drug companies. Those same drugs that are manufactured here are available in other countries at a lower price, because the drug companies and the insurance companies are spending $400 to $500 million a year in lobbying efforts in which both parties are complicit to maintain the status quo. Injustice in America of any kind, especially racial injustice, which continues, is not something that we should be proud of and we need to resolve. The situation in Philadelphia that occurred, I don't know how many people know the exact story, and I'll try and be brief. 2 African-American gentlemen walked into the store. They asked to use the bathroom. They were asked to buy something. They didn't. Something happened verbally between them and the manager. The manager decided to call 911. The men were arrested, handcuffed. Thank God they didn't resist, and they were put in jail. And it created a tremendous problem for the company. We immediately went to Philadelphia. We met with the 2 gentlemen. We met with clergy. We met with the DA. But most importantly, we realized that we had a problem. And it's a problem that I think exists widely in this country. And it's something that I would characterize as unconscious bias that many of us have based on our own life experience. And as a result of that, we decided that we should close every store at Starbucks at great expense, not for a PR stunt, not for marketing, but to train 180,000 people. And then we got experts who could help us do it. Cheryl Eifel from NAACP, Brian Stevenson, Common, Melody Hobson, a whole host of people who could help us with the curriculum. It was 4 hours of training, which is not something that's going to change people's view. And now we're training everyone that comes into Starbucks, because we hire almost 50,000 new people a year. The training is ongoing. The training is deeply a courageous act, because we're doing something that we've realized we fell short on, and we're admitting the fact that we have to get better at this. And I think this is in many ways a proxy for the country. We have to be able to have uncomfortable conversations. We have to talk to people who are different than ourselves. We have to embrace the diversity of the nation. Starbucks is a diverse organization, and we want to do everything we can. It was a terrible moment for the company. It's not something that we're going to forget, and it's something that we learned a great deal from, and we're still learning it about. And I would just say, as somebody who grew up in a very diverse background as a young boy in the projects, I didn't see color as a young boy, and I honestly don't see color now. And I want to do everything I can in terms of the character and the dignity of what it means to be the President of the United States, is if I should run and be elected, that the Oval Office represents so much about the character of the nation, the morality of the nation. And we all know that we've seen things in the last 2 years that embarrass us, not only at home, but around the world. And we need to do everything to restore the humanity of the country. And the President of the United States has a large role to play in that, because he sets the agenda on the morality of the nation. When we can't get an immigration bill, when we've got a level of debt that we have, when we've got a failing education system, a healthcare system that is a crisis, and millions of Americans that no longer have access to the prospects of the American dream. All of this is about one thing, and that is no one has stood up and said, I am going to be accountable for the results. If I run for president, I raise my hand and I'm saying, I am accountable to solve these problems. And if we look at all of these issues that I've just gone through, and we can go through them again, the debt, the healthcare issue, education, all of the issues, immigration, this is not new. This has been with us for years.
And we want
Why?